Hello, good morning, everyone. Glad that you're here with us for this talk by Manuel Spierenburg. He's been called the Swiss Army knife in the data world, but he also really likes to skateboard. So what's the latest trick you've learned?
Yes, hello? Yeah, I really like kickflips, and lately I learned that I can kickflip also down the ledge, so that's my latest trick I learned.
Okay,
Yeah,
pretty
really.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're not here to talk about skateboarding. I'm very curious to hear about whether Captain America should still host our data, so give it up for Manuel.
Yes, hello PyData. My name is Manuel Spierenburg. I'm a data engineer for Big Data Republic. And I have to admit something, I had no idea who Captain America was when I made this title. So in the meantime, I watched at least one of the movies. And I have to say, this talk is not about how Steve Rogers became Captain America and how he became our hero. This talk is maybe something about a movie which doesn't exist yet. It's about how Captain America became too powerful and we became too dependent on him, and he was used against us. And how we can take back control of our data. To understand this, I want to touch on some different points. First, let's have a look a little bit on the history of data platforms and how we get here. And let's have a look what our company is using today and why actually what we are having currently is also like a problem and can be a concern to you. Then let's have a look at the alternatives and what you could do to mitigate the problem. And at the end, I hope I can motivate you to also join the movement. So first, have a look at the history of data platforms. Like the first data processing tools were actually introduced by Herman Hollerith, and he was using punch cards to store data. You could store around 100 characters, but that was like in 1890. And they were going strong for quite some while, because only in the 50s we had a new way how to store data. We had magnetic drums, and mainframes were also introduced, like big machines you had like in the basement, and you could interact with the data with terminals. Hard disk also came into existence in that time frame. And in the 80s, there was quite a big difference. Oracle and IBM joined with the first enterprise database management systems. This was quite a revolution and also changed how we could store and also interact with data. That was also gave a new paradigm shift. We came in the era of data warehousing. Data warehousing was that we would collect all the data of a company in a centralized way and make it accessible for analytics. In that time frame, also open source databases came into existence, Postgres, MySQL, and they're still going strong today. I think until at least the 2000s, this was like the world we were living in. We had databases, we had data warehouses for analytics. We could already kind of store quite a lot of data. Also with the internet, the data accumulation became quite big. But processing of the data was still quite a problem. Usually, you would always depend on one big machine who had the power. And to do big data analytics, we had to introduce some other ways. OLAP cubes were introduced, which did some kind of pre-processing that at the end, you could do the analytics. But after 2000s, there was quite a shift. MapReduce, a paper which was published by Google, really changed the world. Hadoop clusters came into existence, and actually the first cloud provider, AWS, was also introduced. With Hadoop, it was possible now not only store the data very distributed, but also process it very distributed. But it was a little bit a different way of thinking, and people had problems to adapt to it. New technologies had to come and to help with that problem. The Hive Metastore made the Hadoop clusters much more accessible. You had now a SQL interface, an interface everybody already knew how to use. And Apache Spark revolutionized how we could process this data. Microsoft with Azure and also Google joined the cloud. And actually, Google also introduced Kubernetes, or gave it to us, which is now kind of the standard way how we can deploy containerized applications in the cloud. So it was after the 2010, we saw another shift. Before that, we saw companies had either their own data centers or would have data centers somewhere, which were somewhat expensive, and the promise of the cloud was it will be much cheaper. So the last 10 years, we saw a lot of companies said, yeah, we have to go to the cloud, it's much cheaper, we have to go get rid of our data centers, and that was the way to go. But usually you were very interlocked in what the cloud could provide. Luckily, nowadays we see a lot of open source tools which make the cloud more accessible to other applications also be introduced. Open data platforms, Iceberg, or Trino, a SQL engine, which is super powerful, which you can use actually to build your own data platform. And we will see why this is important later on. In the last years, we see another maybe introduced paradigm shift. DuckDB and DuckLake, very interesting technologies. They say a little bit, yeah, this centralized approach is maybe not so necessary anymore, because what we see is a lot of companies have their big Hadoop clusters, they have their Spark applications, they use Databricks, but usually they actually don't process big data. And we have such powerful machines in our hands, why we are not using these powerful machines? And DuckDB is definitely there to fill this void. And I'm very excited about the future, so let's see where this is going. Now, but this is still not what most companies are using today. If you look a little bit what Dutch companies are using nowadays, we can see that the mid-sized to large companies are very already moved to the cloud infrastructure. 80% of this medium or large Dutch companies. And if you look a little bit at the statistics, we can clearly see AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud are dominating the market. Actually, all the big Dutch companies are relying on the big three. So that's also my question to you. In your company, who here is using AWS? Yes, quite some hands. OK, interesting. And Azure? Difficult to make a distinction, is maybe about the same. And Google Cloud? It's very even. OK, that's interesting. I think it's very even out. And is there a company who is not using the cloud? There is private cloud? Yes, some people. Can I guess? Is it Action? No? Because I was looking a little bit at their stack.com to see what the companies are using. And in the Netherlands, NS, Philips, and Booking.com are set to use AWS. I cannot guarantee that this is correct. I got it from the website. Azure is from Ahold Delhaize, ABN AMRO, and Albert Heijn. And Bol, ASML, Prosus, KLM are using the Google Cloud. By the way, Big Data Republic here, it's from the slides, but also we use the Google Cloud as our IT infrastructure. There are also companies which have a more mixed cloud approach, which is already quite good, so then you don't depend on just one cloud provider. And Action, so far as I know, they use their own cloud. If you look a little bit more into the data platform world, because that's what I want to talk about here, we can see what are the companies using on the cloud. So either you use the analytics platform which are provided by the cloud providers. That can be Amazon, Redshift, Azure, Synapse, or from Google Cloud BigQuery. But also a lot of companies are using Databricks or Snowflake. But they are also running on either of the big three cloud providers. And on the storage layers, they're in some way or other always using the object storage layers, which are provided by the cloud providers. If we look, where is the data stored? If I use the analytics platforms or the storage of these cloud providers, we can see that it's very nice. They offer a lot of data centers already in Europe. These are just some examples. But it's important to know, even if you store your data in Europe, the headquarters of these three companies are still located in the US. And you think, yeah, why would I use European regions? Because sometimes when you look at the costs, actually other regions could be much more cheaper. But most Dutch companies, they're operating in the Netherlands, and they have the data is used here in the Netherlands. So you want to have your data close to the region where you work with. This gives you lower bandwidth costs, you have faster response times, and sometimes also international data transfer can be quite legal complexities. And actually for some sectors, EU regions are a requirement. Also, companies want to be GDPR compliant. And if your data is in Europe, it should be GDPR compliant. And you want to have digital sovereignty. What is meant with this is if your data is in Europe, you want that it is under European law. But here comes the catch. That's actually not always the case. So since 2018, the US Cloud Act is into existence, and it gives US authorities quite some power. They can access or can legally ask access to your data, which is stored on American clouds, and the companies are obliged to comply. They don't even have to tell you. So you as a company, if you're using American clouds, even don't know if the American government has your data. This is even in direct conflict with GDPR and can be a problem. The US government can even go a step further, and in some situations, they can request that access to your data will be restricted, and you don't have access to your data anymore. Lately, also, experts say there's another threat, which is that the US government could imply new taxes on the cloud providers, and all of a sudden, the cost of your cloud cost could explode. You think now, OK, all these things, it sounds very worrisome, this could happen, but does it really happen? And unfortunately, it already happened. And I have some cases to show. There's the Amsterdam Trade Bank. This happened in 2022. The Amsterdam Trade Bank was a subsidiary of the Russian Alpha Bank. And after the invasion of Russia in Ukraine, sanctions from the American states actually for Microsoft and AWS suspended services to the Amsterdam Trade Bank. And the bank could not function anymore and went bankrupt. Another case is just from this year. The International Criminal Court came also under sanctions from the American government because they did some investigations which were not aligned with American politics. And what happened is that the chief prosecutor had no access anymore to his emails and could actually not work anymore on a case which was in direct conflict with American politics. So these two examples just show that it's very one-sided. If the American government thinks you are not aligned with them, they can ask the US cloud providers to restrict your access. And yeah, this is quite worrisome. So you have to ask yourself, what happens if my company is next? Are we aligned with US politics? How severe it is if the US government has my data and I don't even know it? And also, can I still function if I don't have access to my data more? Do I have like a backup system? And maybe we should look into alternatives. If you look into alternatives, I think there are two ways which are quite obvious. So we can have your own data center. It's a little bit going back to what we had. But there are still some pros to that. You have complete control, you have maximum security, and you have no vendor locking. But the cons are also quite big. So you have a high initial investment, for sure. You require some staff which manages your data center. You could also hire another company doing it for you, but you need people doing it for you. And the scalability is also limited. The cloud, you cannot beat cloud scalability. You can have 500 nodes today and tomorrow 0 nodes, how you want it. This you cannot do with your own data center. But there are also European cloud providers nowadays, and there are some pros. So usually they are fully GDPR compliant, and you have real data sovereignty. So the data which is in European cloud providers and is in Europe is under European law. There can also be sanctions, but the process is different than in the American states, and it will be not as fast. And I think also another pro is actually you can support European companies which provide you cloud infrastructure. The cons are, yeah, if we look at the market, we see it's less mature. You have a smaller portfolio. They don't offer so many services as the American cloud providers nowadays. And if you're a company which is working internationally in the whole globe, usually you can see that they don't have as many data centers, especially not in the whole world. So, but yeah, we don't want to do our own data center again. Let's have a look. Can we maybe find alternatives in the European cloud? I want to replace my analytics platform. And first, let's have a look if they're like platforms as a service, because I don't want to build everything again. I want to just replace my BigQuery, my Redshift, or my Azure Synapse. And there are other big platforms, ClickHouse, SingleStore Helios, but maybe also Motherdog you want to use. And they offer cloud versions. These are platforms known that can also handle big data. But if you look a little bit closer, ClickHouse cloud version is using AWS or GCP. SingleStore Helios is using the big three. Motherdog only currently AWS and even only US region. So in the search of the EU data platform, it's just the US cloud hiding underneath. So, but what do the European cloud platforms provide? There's actually a nice website, europeanalternatives.eu. There you can find, for each category, you can find alternatives. And you have, for example, the category object storage providers, cloud computing, but also database as a service. So you can already spin up Postgres, MySQL, or a different database as a service, which is quite nice. But you will not find a real, like a full data platform as a service yet. And that's actually also a problem. Bert Hubert, he is a Dutch software engineer who writes quite a lot about American and European clouds. He's also sometimes on the television. And he says, dear European hosters, you are selling wood and not furniture. And the people are used to furniture. And now they have to go back to wood. That's not how we revolutionize or make the change. And that's maybe also the problem, and why some companies, they see the problem, they're very hesitant to try these new platforms. So what do we need to solve that problem? We have to work with wood and build our own furnitures. And we have everything here, actually. So we can build our own furnitures. The open data stack comes to the rescue. So let's use open source, open standard tools to build our data platform. There are a lot of data engineers writing about this. Jakubowski made a very nice LinkedIn post where he actually proposed an open data stack platform architecture. Has two different architectures, one for small data, one for big data. And the tools nowadays are actually quite mature and can be already used in enterprise worlds. OK, so we have our open data stack. Sounds really cool. It's a data platform, and we want to deploy it. What do we need to deploy it? Actually, you only need two things. You need a place to store your data, and that's to use the object storages. And we need a cluster where you can deploy the platform. That's Kubernetes. Two things, object storage and Kubernetes. And if you need only those two things, we can find a lot of alternatives. Again, you can go to europeanalternatives.eu, and you find cloud providers in the Netherlands, CISO Cloud, or Scaleway, which are French, or Exoscale, which are in Switzerland, but there are many others. So yes, now we have everything together. So the only thing you need to do is you have to build your OpenStack data platform and deploy it on one of these cloud providers. But still, this is quite a big step for companies. How can we get there? I need a team to do it. It takes weeks, months, maybe a year until I have something running on these clouds. And that's where we were thinking, how can we help companies to start experimenting with this new setup? And that's why we want to introduce the Big Data Republic Open Data Platform. It's a GitHub repository, and this one will help companies to experiment with this new setup. The goal of this GitHub repository is that you can deploy your data platform on a European cloud within 1 day. There will be a QR code at the end so that you get to the GitHub repository. So the repository exists of 2 parts. You have the infrastructure part and the platform part. It's actually Terraform scripts, and with the infrastructure part, you are doing 2 things. You deploy an object storage and a Kubernetes cluster on a European cloud provider. And then with the platform part, you deploy the data platform with help of Terraform and Helm charts to the Kubernetes cluster. For starting points, we already defined a very simple open data stack, which looks like this. On the object storage, you will store iceberg tables. You use the Trino SQL engine, which uses the NASI catalog to work with, so he knows where the tables are. And on the front end side, you have Apache Superset, which you can use for analytics, but also visualization. And also, we also added orchestrator Dexter. So the idea here is a little bit, we can extend this. For example, if you don't like Dexter, let's add Airflow, and you can change the components to your liking. And currently, we have integrated actually with already 2 cloud providers, CISO Cloud and Scaleway. So I hope actually that people can join this movement. And if they say, yeah, we also like it, but we want to integrate with a different cloud provider, either have a look how we currently integrate it, and maybe build your own integration and give it back to the community. And also, if somebody wants to change something in this stack, he can add something to this project and make it configurable. And so other people can also use the same configuration. So yeah, now we have it here. You can build your open data platform, and you can deploy it. But you may ask yourself, how much will this cost? It will be much more expensive, I guess. We looked a little bit into this. I have to say, it's difficult always to get the real cost, because sometimes you have networking costs also play quite a big role. I just made an example. These are just some calculations. We didn't run this yet. So I made like an example data pipeline, which is processing some data each day and stores it. And we made it's a very small data pipeline. And we can compare. We can see that actually, for this data pipeline, the storage and container cost or compute costs, if you use one of the big 3, are around $1,000 to $1,200 per month. For the CISO Cloud and Scaleway, we estimated that you can process this with a Kubernetes cluster, which costs about $500 a month. And then we saw the cloud costs for CISO Cloud are way more expensive than the other providers. I asked them why they are so expensive, and they are currently only have very fast and expensive hardware for their storage. They are working on a cheaper version, but that doesn't exist yet. Scaleway was actually quite interesting. The storage cost was even cheaper than the American counterparts, and then the total costs there, what we calculated, was even cheaper. So moving away from the US cloud doesn't have to be expensive. But yeah, this is something you have to experiment with. But I hope now, with this GitHub repository, we can get people on the way. Try to deploy your open data stack or open data platform on a European cloud. Contribute to the GitHub repository. Integrate with maybe another cloud provider, and also add other components. And try to break free from the US cloud dependency and take control of your data. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We have some time for questions. There's me with the mic and someone in the back with the mic. I'll go to Alexander first.
Thank you. Any thoughts on the Gaia X project? Germany people still push for that.
Yes, I can. No, this is something I have to look into.
It's some European Union project going on for more than a decade, connecting data and companies and.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I see that governments are trying also to push in these directions, but I think a little bit also it has to come from the community and from the engineers to start it. You can start with regulations and from the politics, but usually it's quite slow. I also know that in Dutch politics they're also trying to move in these directions, but I think we actually have the power to do it already ourselves. Yeah.
Hi. Hey, down here. Hello. Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Thanks. Nice talk. I was a little bit surprised at your calculations. So we were on Hacker News front page earlier this year. We had a post about moving from AWS to OVH, who you didn't include. They're Europe's largest cloud from France.
Yeah.
And we saved 66%.
Yeah.
And we were just using Kubernetes and S3.
Yeah.
So I don't know how Scaleway is the same price as AWS. I think.
Yeah, I have to say. So
and you can go cheaper, of course. You can go to Hertzner.
Yeah. No, I think so. I have to say I only included now in my calculations compute and storage costs, and when I looked at those, it was kind of similar, at least at the storage cost level and the compute cost, because you're running a Kubernetes cluster and you have to calculate a little bit, what kind of Kubernetes cluster do I need? And that was,
Okay, but from our experience, it's a lot cheaper.
It's a lot cheaper.
That's
very nice,
cheaper,
actually.
Yeah.
I also know.
And also the hardware is better. So you can get good NVMe disks on OVH.
Yeah.
You can't on AWS. They're going to cost you a fortune, and you only get a gigabyte per second.
Yeah.
You can get good, like even on Hertzner, you can get 16 gigabyte per second NVMe drives. That's like 16x what you get in AWS.
That's
the
nice.
Echo here.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's very nice. Actually, I would like to talk to you about this because very interesting information. I also know, for example, Basecamp, the company, they moved away from AWS, but they run their own data center again. And they said they halved the price. So they're now, half of what they paid before at AWS.
All right, we've got a question here a little bit to the front.
Hi, great talk. I was wondering, you're talking about having your compute and your storage in Europe, but that's not all of your infrastructure, of course, because like even you just now point to GitHub as a place where you store where you have your infrastructure definitions. So I was wondering, I mean, that could also be cut off. It's also a Microsoft service. It's also something you log into. It's also, if you're under sanctions, you might be able to lose.
Yeah.
So how do you think about that? And also, I mean, Linux, I think, also has like basically thrown out contributors from Russia at some point in the past because of sanction rules. So.
Yeah. No, indeed, that's also very important to look at. I think in this talk, I focused on data platforms. I think it's for companies, it's very difficult to, because they spend a lot of time and money to move everything into the cloud, and now to move everything in one go again, that is very difficult. So in this talk, I just wanted to focus on the data platform part. But this is definitely something maybe somebody else should also have a look into, and then also connect these components. Yeah.
Hi. I would like to add something to what previous speaker mentioned, combination of Hertzner with another cloud provider. In our case, Nextcloud is also a good combination. Nextcloud is German provider, and we see also costs much lower than than regular US cloud provider, and also they give more or less stable and good configurations.
Yeah.
And I also see that universities are moving their crucial and very sensitive data there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you considered Nextcloud. in your well, choice of the provider?
Yeah, maybe I should have if I heard these statements. I haven't, so I first looked at a Dutch company, and then I saw CISO Cloud, and the next one I tried Scaleway. But yeah, as I said, there are many different cloud providers now already available, and I haven't compared all of them. Yeah, but it's good to know that they're actually so cheap.
So this is about cloud providers, but what is your vision or idea about the foundation models? Because we're getting more and more dependent on these as well.
Sorry, I'm not fully sure what you mean with foundation models now, or the...
Like the Gemini, OpenAI, ChatGPT.
Ah, okay. Yes, so indeed, this is something I didn't have a look at, so I cannot comment. I fully concentrate on the data platform side. Yeah.
When you said that European cloud providers are providing wood and not furniture, that implies that the platform as a service offering isn't really mature in Europe. Are there any offerings that are promising to replace stuff like Redshift?
Yeah, so actually I saw now there's a, I think, Finnish company, Avon, which starts to also provide ClickHouse as a service, and they also start to integrate with European clouds. So I think that could be a quite good replacement. And what I actually also see is that companies offer like this similar like OpenStack data platforms as a complete bundle and host them also on European clouds. So because the open data stack is already quite powerful, and actually also enterprise companies are using those tools nowadays to process big data. I think that's quite an interesting development. And then you also don't have a vendor lock-in. You're able to exchange parts as you want. So I think that's definitely something to have a look at. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, looking at the time, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 more questions.
Do you have examples of companies who made that switch? And could you share some context about why and when they decided to use one of these open source data platforms that you showed?
Yes. So I have to say I cannot share everything there, because I know some Swiss companies made the switch already. Usually it was... There were like 2 reasons, like cloud costs and also like the security aspect. So they were worried about their data is not secure or could be accessed by American government. Yeah, what we see there is that still companies are very hesitant, but as I said, the companies in Switzerland, they were very successful using exactly a similar stack I just proposed. Yeah.
So the question I have is in terms of legislation. So we know that the EU is doing a lot right now to be less dependent on the US. And one way to move forward is to alter the legislation that we have in the EU. Do you see any challenges in terms of that for the cloud development that we have?
So I don't know where you are. Oh, right, very back, yes. Sorry, I have to say I'm not a legal expert. The only thing I can see now is that the European cloud providers, they can be fully GDPR compliant and more compliant to the European laws. And this is very important for companies. I don't know if it's difficult for European cloud providers, more difficult, but I think if we start using them, it will really help them to also become bigger and more successful. I'm not sure if this helps with your question.
More or less.
Or less, OK.
All right, that's all the time we have. I would like to thank you very much for your talk. And we've got a little gift for you, so
thank you.
You can stay hydrated. That's Manuel, everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you.